And then the project that I'm involved with is Defect Dojo, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. The dependency check is dependency track project. The dependency check's been around for a while. That's a Java one. You can run it in Jenkins. And then another guy from that started up, Steven, has started up the dependency track project, which is more of a CI/CD integration, and it really is focusing around bill of materials. So, for your particular software, what does that bill of materials look like? And he's trying to come up with a bill of materials standard. He's working with the government. It's kind of cool. We'll see where it goes. But that's how he's just figuring out which of your dependencies are not accurate or out of date. A lot of the code. So mod security, core rule set project. We're all familiar with mod security. It's been around for a long time. Thanks. And then there's that project. That's mostly done. So why get involved? So maybe you're like, why would you want to do this, right? Isn't application security work enough? Did you really get it working?
Well, I got one working and I sent the link out.
Awesome, thanks.
Let me try and see if I can hit that link.
Awesome. Very awesome.
I'm not sure what your laptop's issue is, but since I'm a Comcast employee, maybe my Wi-Fi is just better.
Well, you're not it doesn't look like, it looks like it snipped off the link though.
Oh, yeah, it did. Oh, it must not like it when people are.
I'll let you get past it, but filter. Yeah, I was waiting for that. Thanks.
Well, since I hear it all the time too.
Yeah. And so why get involved, right? Isn't like your day job enough? And my answer is actually it's not. But it also gives me, I've been able to recruit most businesses that I've been at. I've been very amenable to donating or giving a couple hours or a time back to contributing to OWASP, because it also makes, I think, your organization look good or look better. Hey, you're involved in the security community. I mean, that's what you're here for. You're involved to show that you care about security. It's not just taking your job. So really giving back. I mean, almost everybody here is familiar with OWASP Top 10. I mean, how did OWASP Top 10 get about, right? It was people like you who got together to let's create the OWASP Top 10 list. But if we look at the number of people that actually contribute and the number of people that just take, what do you think the percentage is as far as takers? And I can admit I've been a taker for a while. It's not to shame it, but it's high, right? There's lots of people who want stuff for free, but there's not many people who want to actually contribute back. So that's why I give this talk, to try to encourage people to do that. Now, this is from DigitalOcean, so I don't think this is a little bit biased, so I think it's actually heavy to say that 19% of the people or developers are actually involved with open source projects daily. I'm not sure what involved means. This came from DigitalOcean. Thank you. You're awesome. So 19% say that they're involved with open source projects daily. Maybe it's you're using it, or maybe it's you're contributing back. What would you say is the percentage? I mean, how many of you in your organization? I mean, I think every organization is using open source. Is that a safe assumption? And if you're not admitting, you're lying. Right?
You don't know about it.
Yeah. And so how many of you are familiar with this contest? So I've done this contest for this Hacktoberfest. I've done it like 3 or 4 years in a row now. Anybody familiar with this? So anybody, did you participate?
No, just know that.
Yeah, so this is really cool. This is trying to get people involved in open source. And so during the month of October, DigitalOcean, GitHub, and I think there's a couple other organizations that get involved with this. Now it's Microsoft, right? Loving Blue. If you do 5 pull requests to an open source project, you get a free T-shirt, and then they just try to get everybody involved. It's trying to show people, how do you do a PR, right? How do you do a pull request? How do you submit a request? What are the features? A lot of people are kind of scared about submitting their first code request, right? And so this is one effort to help, get that going. Also, moving out of your comfort zone. So one of the things I resisted doing was filling my whole presentation up with memes, because I was starting to look back at conferences and they're like all filled with memes, like all the way through. So no memes here. But most of you are all in security, right? How many of you are coding, right? You know, and how many of you committed like a pull request back? So we're really good at finding things that are wrong, but have you actually tried to build software and really sat in that seat? So I really think that being able to, and like Sandeep, Sandeep came from as a developer. You were a Java developer. I came from way back when I was a developer as well. Is anybody else background here, Joe? Yeah, Evan was. What were you? I forget. You were. Which language are you? Java. Java. Okay. So I actually think that, I mean, developers make the best application security people. Am I biased in that? Who said what?
Kidding.
Is that ridiculous? No, I want some. Yeah, let's have some disagreement. So here's my project, and I'm not going to really talk a lot about this project. More of it is just to show my what I've gotten out of it, and so just real quickly, what the project that I've worked on is Defect Dojo. It's application security management, vulnerability management program. So essentially, what it does is, like, if you're familiar with ThreatFix or CodeDX, those kinds of tools, this is what this tool is, and it's open source, integrates with Jira. You can use it in your CI/CD process. So I have, anytime a developer checks in code, I have it run some containers. Those containers then push it all into one place. It does deduplication. And so you have this listing of vulnerabilities specific to application. Now it can import up to, and I think I have this. Well, this is a screenshot. So if you're familiar with Budget, it's an application that's been written to be insecure. And here you're seeing a baseline security test. It's showing all the vulnerabilities, the age. It helps you, triage this, and it gives you, you can do application security scores. It really just consolidates it all into one place. That's what this does. We have over 34 plus importers. So Acunetics, Fortify. We just did Fortify for you. Not for you, but we just did Fortify. But the way that came in was pretty neat, actually. So here's our GitHub repo. We have issues open. We have some pull requests. Apparently, the thing to track is stars. So we have 630 stars. I have no idea what that means, but
It's favorites.
yeah. So we're getting there. We're getting somewhere. But it's just been really, for me, it's been a really great process. Justin.
Oh yeah, how you doing?
Thanks for making the trek.
Oh boy.
Feeds on the YouTube. We live streamed it.
Okay.
Thanks to Leo. So.
You better hammer it out for the next one.
Yeah, that's the only reason I asked you, is to be my live stream. So here we have it on GitHub. Really, for me, it's been great to have it on to be able to learn how to use GitHub, to just be able to learn how to use source control management, and to keep yourself fresh. Right? Because the longer that I stay out of development, the more stale I get, right? And then when you try to recommend things to developers, it's hard to say, well, do this, but I use this. If you don't know how to use the technology, of course, then you're at a disadvantage. I've been able to meet people that I would never, in a million years, ever meet because of this open source project. And some really cool people around the globe. And I'll just share a few that I've met. We've had over 45 plus contributors. So this is where somebody sees something that they want to, a feature that they want to implement, they're able to submit it back. And some of them have been really small. Some of them have been like spelling error fix, right? Some of them have been massive. Some of them have been, let's rewrite the deduplication logic. Or I had one guy from Swiss Telecom. He did a lot. He was very good at optimization, and so he went through it. He optimized a whole bunch of it. He gave me unit tests. I mean, it was fantastic. So I put these. These are just some of the faces of people that have contributed over the last couple of years. So there's real people behind it. We've got a really good representation from around the globe that have become involved. So I go back to my statement, if you're an AppSec, you must be involved in coding. That's my belief, that you really have to, if you're doing source code review, you just got to get your hands dirty, roll up your sleeves, and get involved in coding. It will make you a much better security professional, hands down. Does anybody disagree with that? Does anybody agree with that?
I agree.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Doesn't say what does involved mean.
So I think you really need to be running code.
But I mean, I've written code, but it's not stuff that I'm like pushing out of the market or
Okay.
seeing it. Stuff.
Well, I even think something like that's perfectly fine, right? I mean, you're actually doing.
Building tools. And
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can speak developer, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Reverse engineering that is
Yeah. Well, yeah. So if you know how to build it, then you should be able to go. I mean, that's definitely a skill that.
especially when you have to look at some of these languages, right? You got like
Sure.
PHP, like, at least learn how to debug all those programs.
Right. So mentor. I've been put in this position, but not as an official mentor, which is really cool. And I'll explain how this has happened. On the OWASP Slack channel, there's always all these people that say, "Hey, could you mentor me?" Whatever. And so you can be an official mentor that way. But I've really enjoyed being an unofficial mentor to people who are security professionals like myself, but were a little bit timid to actually submit their first PR. And I'll give you 2 examples here. So this is, help me say his name right, Sandeep. Rajarshi?
Rajarshi, but that's right. Yeah.
Thank you. That's why I brought Sandeep. It's mine. I don't want to guess. So he works. He's a Cognizant. He's a manager at Cognizant in India, small little place you might know. And he said that he would like to contribute. He actually sent me his code. I went through it and we went back and forth. He was new to Python, and so there was some. We just had a back and forth conversation. And what was exciting to me was, this is the first time he ever did code, and submitted it publicly. And to me, that's a great win, right? Like you're able to help somebody submit something, and that was just this last two weeks ago that happened. There's another fellow that works for Pearson. They do publishing that you might be familiar with, and he did a parser for what was that? Akinetics. So he did one for Akinetics, and there's another one that he's working on. And he also he had done some coding in the past, but he had never done anything. And so we went through a process where we chatted over Slack, he did this, and then he submitted it. So this is one of the exciting things. This guy named Marco, I don't even know his real name, and that's the funny thing. You never know who exactly they are. But I'm pretty sure he's an intern. He's in Taiwan. I woke up one day, and he had submitted a pull request, at 2 in the morning, and it was a small one, but it was fantastic, right? So he wanted to do source code highlighting in Markdown, and so he added source code so you could do, it would recognize whatever language you did in Markdown. I thought that was cool, right? He's a junior developer, but he decided to get involved, and boom, there it was. It's like a little gift, right? So it's like you start this project, and you just never know which way it will go, what people will contribute. Adrian is another one. He works for a large software company in France. He decided that he would like to do a parser, and so he gave one for SonarQube. And so there it was. And so I think this is the power of open source, right? You have something out there, and then you see as a community building up, people contributing back and creating something that would be much, much bigger than you could have done just normally if you had just kept it closed source in-house. So this I woke up one day, and this came from Pearson. He created a whole Terraform, and then he did the whole architecture diagram for building out click of the button for AWS installation. So he submitted that. So that was that's platform, CloudFormation scripts. So just another awesome contribution for the community as
well.
This one made my day. This was like three weeks ago. This is Jay Khalif from the Dow Jones. He took two of our projects, the AppSec pipeline and Defect Dojo, and he published an article. And they did automation in the way that Dow Jones needed it done, right? So, you know, we have these building blocks of security, and then as application security professionals have to figure out, well, how do we make this work in an organization? And so what I like about this kind of stuff is they solved it in their own way, which makes perfect sense. And it was a different twist on it. And then it gives you new ideas to say, oh, maybe I can solve this problem in this way. And it just gives you another fresh perspective, because if you're just in your own organization, especially, I mean, we're not as large as Comcast, but like if you're in a small organization, you tend to maybe only look at a problem through one lens. And then when you focus it outside, you get this other perspective, and you're like, oh, you know what, I can take that little bit that they did and implement it. So that's it. You know, you don't have to get involved in my project, but you know, if you want to look at some of the OWASP projects, it doesn't even have to be an OWASP project, right? But get involved, try it out. It'll stretch you. It'll make you a better security professional. So that's it. I'm going to hand it over to you. Are there any questions about that?
Are you .NET projects at all?
Yes. Yeah. So if you wanted to do some C# or whatever, or VB.NET.
What are your goals for the OWASP community in Philadelphia?
It's a good question. I mean, what are you looking for as far as what would you like to see? I'll just put the question back to you.
I'm mostly trying to learn and get more aware of what OWASP offers and where it would be used in place. So I'm going to bounce it back to you.
So I mean, what I'd like to do is, so our last OWASP we did a CTF, and that we had a lot of fun with. In fact, we had it in King of Prussia. I was actually pointing at you, but I actually meant you. But I was thinking your place is one we have to go to as well. But yeah, we're trying to get people involved, and I guess my goal is so that we have a forum where we can learn, and that's why I'm very careful too, as far as like, you know, vendors and things. We want to be able to learn from each other, right? And so I'm trying to mix it up as far as some of them are going to be hands-on. Let's do some things. Sometimes we'll bring in other people. I would also like to see, like Sandeep's done some presentations in the past, but if anybody's interested in just even doing a 20-minute or 20-minute discussion or talk about something that you're working on, I'd certainly, you know, that you could do that. Just let one of us know. But really, for me, it's just building and learning is what I want to do. And then also, I mean, my kids are here, but I want to see that next generation of hackers. So these guys have all worn their OWASP shirts today. But you know, it's also, you know, bringing the younger generation into hacking or security, right? But it's a good question.
No, I would say one of the things that I've done in the past, and I know some others have, is if you're doing a small project that is even not necessarily like, if you can get approval from your company to talk about it, that would be good. If it's something personal, you know, to bring that in and just show people.
Yeah, totally. So we're gonna kick it over to you.
All right.
So there's this, let me just connect. So there's a, so you can either, if you have it, you can either do it from here, or you can, I mean, it always took me like a second to sit down to do this. Connect to that Wi-Fi point. Is anybody here involved in an open source project of some sort that they want to share? Come join. So on the screen, we're just switching over, and we'll start the next one in a moment here.
All right, so wait, the guest one, 45J Solstice?
Yes.
What was this one? Okay. Sometimes I have trouble finding the IP address.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is it flashing? But there's several. Well, actually, if we have a minute, There's a new con called WOPR.
Yeah, flip it around so they can.
No. There's like a delay. There's a new conference called WOPR. I don't remember what that stands for currently. It's being run by the organizers of DC 215 and a few of the other local groups.
Yeah.
I'm not an organizer, but I just think they're doing great work, and I want to put it out there. That's happening in March
Okay.
in Atlantic City. They're shooting for some huge hands-on stuff. So if OWASP is interested,
Sure.
I'd love to get an organizer from over there and
Yeah.
you talking.
Yeah.
They're certainly looking for speakers and trainers and all that right now.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's all I have.
Is it all right if we put it here?
Yeah. I sort of put it there just because I wanted to watch it for the first
Couple minutes.
couple of minutes, but it's stable. It's good.
All right, cool.
I'm really impressed with it too much. I know I shouldn't be because it's, but just the ability to turn on your laptop, point it at something. Hey, you're on the internet.
Which is awesome when you don't intend to be on the internet.
It's awesome and terrifying. Yeah. It's my little camera blocker is gonna go right back on. It's awesome when China's not doing it. Actually, the other question I had was the sound quality. Test. Test. Test.
Got a loop.
Yeah, let me just pause that so it doesn't.
Alexa.
Alexa,
You good over there?
I'm on the wireless. Am I supposed to run the Solstice app?
Yes.
Do you go to the,
it's just
There's that the address right there.
Yeah, my machine's fighting.
Sorry, you're saying.
Yeah, you heard there was, they connect subpoena.
Oh,
From Alexa.
So,
I saw Alexa car.
Oh.
Did you see that too? You can buy it for your car now. It says on your dashboard.
I have issues with that.
Yeah, so police subpoenaed
Alexa,
Alexa
change
law
this,
for
change this
a murder investigation, which means it's just recording your house 24/7.
Yeah.
well, yeah.
Well, that's not the same thing. Because what law enforcement wants it to be and what they can actually turn over, like, I'd love to see that.
Right. Should I hold up?
Yeah, I was gonna say something about a Comcast product, but now you noticed. You are being recorded.
You better sit here or?
Just wanna make sure everybody can see me. I don't need that format, but.
You're good. We're following you around. We're following you around.
So Dean just asked where that was published.
This is on the F5 Labs website, and this is a very rare actual physical copy of this report because it's like 100 pages. Here, that's my gift to you. Shameless pandering.
I'll show you here.
I'll actually give the URL in the presentation as well. It's protectf5labs.com, which is not that hard. If you wanted to kill a bunch of color printer, you can print it out, but it's a big PDF. It's also going to be an interactive website once we get that done. So this is basically about a year of my life. My boss came to me about a year and a half ago and said, I want you to write the relevant and brief report of applications, web applications. And it's just like, okay. And I'll get more into what I did and how I did it, because this is actually going to be a nice talk that gets into all the details. But a little bit about me. I am a threat researcher. They tacked evangelist on there, which means I get paid to come out and speak and write stories, which is really cool. I was actually a security guy for a long, long, long time. I actually didn't come up through the development, though. I went to school to actually be a programmer back in the 80s, and at some point got bored with it and was just like, this is really, I'm just in a cube, but I want to be out like working with people. And then kind of dove out and got involved in IT and what they called computer and communications. It eventually became telecommunications, it became networking, and became a network engineer. And that was sort of my glide path into security. So I was like an early Nobel guy and WAN guy, and then eventually got into firewalls and things like that. And around 2000, I was doing pen tests for a small security consulting company in Seattle, very elite but small. That they actually did the original firewalls for Microsoft, and started to do some web app stuff because I had done internet banking in my last job, and that's how I met Jeremiah Grossman. He got me involved in not the OWASP but the WASP. If anybody knows the WASP, which is mostly dead. And got to meet a lot of really cool people. And of course, Jeremiah was building White Hat at the time, so it was really interesting to have talks with him because I was, doing manual testing. My claim to fame is I actually did a bunch of security work and broke into Nordstrom as part of a pen test for them through their multiple web app problems. Anyway, so I've been doing the internal security thing. I've done the consulting thing, and then about 2 years ago, F5 Labs actually was building up this whole concept of building threat research, and really it's kind of like PR. It's also kind of like giving back to the community. The idea is basically that I get to do threat research, give talks, produce reports for the security community, and I don't get to talk about product. I actually don't even know much about product, although I've used F5 products a bunch myself. I don't get to talk about product. So there's actually nothing in there. It's really just about providing security research for the industry. And of course, it's like, hey, F5 does security stuff. So it's really kind of an ideal job. It's like, wow, I get paid to do the best aspects of my job I enjoy. And the fun part is that just before I came to F5, I actually wrote a book on how to build a security program and pass audit, because that was my life before that. So if you have to deal with audit, then I recommend my book. And if you send me an email, I can get you a review copy. My email's on there, my Twitter's on there. But I've been doing this a long time, done a lot of web app stuff. It's been a long time since I've actually published code. I did a lot of custom code for organizations. I've done LAMP back in the day. Back when people actually wrote Perl for the web. Gross. Do Python now. Anyway, so back to the story. I was to write this giant report, so luckily F5 was good friends with White Hat. Like I said, I know Jeremiah. We had a long relationship before he actually passed on a lot of that connections before he left there. So I actually got a year of White Hat data of what their SAST and DAST. So this is a complete dump of everything they saw on Sentinel, and put that in the report. Lorca, you may not be familiar with, but they are a threat intelligence company. They have tens of thousands of honeypots and sensors all over the internet. All of us can some shady ISPs and some really cool, interesting things. So I basically got a year of attack data from them. Like, show me every web attack you saw in 2017. And I've since added the first half of 2018, and you'll see some of that data incorporated in here. I work with Whatcom Community College, and actually also work with the University of Washington. These are both little Seattle-based colleges, and they went through the exploit database, looking at all the web app vulnerabilities. I did about 7 years of analysis on that. And of course, we did a big Pokemon survey of users to kind of get their feel on what they see the security problems are. And so basically, I took all this data, as well as a bunch of analysis work of breach records, which I did in conjunction with Whatcom, and produced this report. And let's kind of get into some of it. I'll just kind of give you a quick idea. This is from the survey. We broke it out by industries, and I'm just highlighting tech because I'm saying hopefully most of you are involved in tech in some ways, but finance was probably our biggest respondent to the survey. But we actually have some industry breakouts, and I'm going to highlight the tech one just arbitrarily. So one of the things that we ask people are how important apps. And when we say apps, this is really my boss kind of corporate thinking. It's like, well, do you actually mean web apps? He says, well, I do, but nobody says web apps anymore. Maybe we just say apps because everything's, and he's right. I mean, mobiles and all that stuff, they really all are just web apps, but just call them apps. So we basically ask people, like, how important are apps? And you can see for tech companies, they're far more important. 42% are considered mission critical. That number is actually, it was kind of surprising too, 760 average apps in an organization, but if you consider Comcast and how big it is, how many apps, and you look at a single department, how many apps are critical in a single department, like an HR department probably has at least half a dozen things that if they go down, people are going to be screaming about their paychecks, their PTO, their mandatory training they have to do, their promotion systems, so and they're all web apps now. And of course, if you have a lot of apps, you have a lot of environments and frameworks in use. And my last job, I did 10 years at a company that was doing web apps in the financial space. So I know from the developer side, it's a pain in the ass when you have a lot of different frameworks and environments to deal with, especially when it's patching bugs and finding vulnerabilities. So it was kind of painful to see that the average was so high, different things that people had to deal with. We also asked what needed to stay up all the time. Not too surprising that communication apps jumped to the top. Now this is my age showing because I can remember when I was first connecting organizations to the internet with firewalls, like not even 20 years ago, I'd say, late 90s, like 99, that you would hear things from executives like, I'd say like, I'm going to design a firewall, we're going to put this in, how many, who's going to surf the web? And they're like, well, the marketing department needs some web access, maybe the customer support, a couple of them, and that's it. No one else needs web access. And I'm like, okay. And how many people need internet email? Well, maybe only 5 or 6. And I'm like, there's 2,000 employees in this company. And they're like, no. Nobody needs email. And then in the course of the project of the implementation, I'm like, well, actually, everybody needs internet browsing and everybody needs an email address. And it was just like, oh, okay. And if those of us who were in the industry really see how that just went, just like, boom, everybody's got this. It's suddenly everywhere, and everyone's got to do this. And now, not just like, oh, we're not going to give it to some people. It's now everybody has this, and we're absolutely dependent on it. And then the second one you see about remote access. I'm a remote worker. I actually lived in Seattle for 20 years. I've been in Delaware for 2, and I'm 100% remote. I go back to Seattle, a couple of weeks out of the year. So I'm completely dependent on all my remote access stuff. And again, like I said, I was a sysadmin network security guy for a long time, and now it used to be like, oh, we've got SharePoint, we've got the intranet, and you get to that via the VPN, and then at some point it's just like, we're just going to put those things directly on the internet. And it's just like, are you crazy? You can't do that. And now it's just like, oh yeah, most of those things now just live on the internet. I mean, we talk about the Beyond Core zero trust model. It's like, let's just put everything on the internet, and we'll just make sure it's secure. And of course, we're absolutely dependent to have that up all the time because all our remote workers can't work if it's down. So, there's a lot of stories behind these numbers, which it's worth unpacking. We also asked people what it would cost for a breach, and this is in millions. It may seem high, it may seem low. We actually did some analysis on just the legal costs of a breach, and they actually seem low for what you're looking at, especially for organizations, large organizations with a large breach and there's a lawsuit. And even if they win the lawsuit and manage to get off the hook, they end up spending millions on attorney fees anyway, just to defend themselves. But again, this is a survey. This is not our numbers. This is what people are telling us. And I do say that just trying to figure out the cost of the breach is one of the most elusive things in the industry, and it's something that everybody is trying to chase. But it's an interesting problem.
But what do you think the cost is going to go through with GDPR? There's still a TBD.
Yeah. Well, and that's the interesting thing too. There's some talk in here. I think maybe the next slide. I had a slide. I remember we pulled it out about what the worst kind of breach was.
Yeah.
And we did some regional breakdowns and found that like North America and the U.S. cared a lot about breach of confidential data. Whereas like countries like in Europe and in Asia, that was some of the lowest estimates. They didn't care at all. And I was like, this is pre-GDPR. They're going to care a lot more. And Canada as well was low, but I'm like, PIPA is now requiring breach disclosure. It's like, you're going to feel it. And Australia is now starting to require. So I'm kind of interested to see, we're going to probably do not another survey this year, but maybe next year and see how the things change, the attitudes change. So far, my feeling on GDPR, from what I've heard from folks, is they're still trying to get a handle on it. I mean, it's just looking at how PCI and all these other things have rolled out. It's just incredibly slow, and there's just not enough auditors and not enough regulators out there just nailing people on it. So people are just going to do the least amount possible in the slowest time they can. But hopefully we'll see something down the road, especially if California passes their version. This is just comparing the cost and impact between industries. It's kind of interesting to see which industries care more, which care less. A big part of this was actually doing breach analysis, and if you see those little letters that everybody gets, we actually went through and read all of them. So we went to get every single one that we could get our hands on. California is a perfect example of it, and the problem is if you just kind of can't really outsource this thing or hand it to a bunch of automation or anything, you really have to read it as a security person to really understand what it's saying. So when you see this here, camera, so I won't move around. But if you actually see what's red and highlighted, that gives you a hint as to what actually happened. In this case, this was one of those mage cart injections, which when I published this report, that was one of our big findings. Like, hey, there's this huge amount of injection going on e-commerce sites, people, and it's been going on for a couple of years, and it's just getting worse. And so now, the stories are finally breaking. But if you read through the breach letters, and you'll see that there's a big history of this going on. It's a rampant problem. So basically, with the 384 cases, and about 80% of them had explanations that we could use. And this is kind of getting into the Verizon breach report feeling that we had. And actually, for this year, I've only done 6 months of 2018 because we did the first quarter. So I'm doing Q2, Q3, and starting on looking at some of the Q4 data that's coming in. And we're already blowing this number out because more states are putting more up, and we have more people reading through these letters. So we're probably going to have closer to 600 or 700 cases that we're looking at. So it's kind of interesting. And actually, we're getting a lot more detail, which I'll get into as well. So overall, this is how they broke down. Web attacks, where it's at the top, 30%. And those are mostly those kind of like, we had an injection in our site, or you had Sabre who had a problem and took out huge numbers of people. We basically were trying to count one breach as one thing. So even like when we had Sabre taking out like 4 or 5 organizations, I still counted it as one breach because that was really just, I'm trying to find like, what are people where the pain points are? And I'm not really looking at numbers or dollars. I'm just looking at pure incidents. There's some interesting things in here where you see phishing and credential theft because they really are almost the same thing. And we're going to see a better breakout of that in the new report that will come in next year. Just because I didn't have the detail, because you'd see a lot of these letters saying like, hey, we got phished. And it's like, well, what does that mean? It could mean, I got phished and I got malware, or I got phished and I got ransomware. Usually, and then they sometimes would call out ransomware and be like, will that come in via phishing, or that come in via credit attack? And so it was really hard to figure that out. But what we're really seeing now in the newer letters, yes.
Are you seeing this like what's the trend year over year?
Well, this is our first year, so I can tell you the trend that I'm seeing in the data now is phishing is jumping up. Especially now that I'm seeing more data, it's going to come on par with web attacks or even higher. Just because I'm also seeing a lot more detail about email breaches via phishing, which is interesting.
Isn't web attacks phishing too? Because
No, so what I consider a web attack is an actual, like, I'm going to pop a vulnerability, a web application vulnerability on a website. And usually in the letters, if you read through them, you'll see, like so-and-so did this, or there was some unknown authorized person found a vulnerability in our site. And I think I'll break this down. Yeah, I did. There. So what you actually saw was a lot of it was all this web injection stuff that the mage cart folks are doing. Tons and tons and tons and tons of it. And remember, this is just breaches. We're not talking about denial of service. We're not talking about, things that wouldn't leak confidential information that people had to write a disclosure letter on. So they all read like a credit card. Yes.
Back to your last slide. I was really surprised to see insider threat attack is like so low at 2%. That's one of the fastest growing areas. And if you combine that with phishing and credential theft, which are all can be combined by human decisions, it's human action, whether it's insider intentional or whether a human mistake, you get to almost the 40% of where almost all the events are tied to a human decision, whether it's malicious or unintentional.
I purposely break those out because I say, and I've worked in banking on and off for about 15 years. It's like there's a big difference between somebody who's sneaky, covering stuff up, trying to sneak stuff out the door. And yeah, it's growing, but I think it's growing like from 2% to 3%. Versus people who are like, and I try to be on the user side. It was church will say I'm on the side of the fire brigade, not the fire. People are actively getting tricked. I mean, some places they're just being stupid and like, why did you click that? But other times it's like, this is hard to figure out. They're trying to trick you. This is hard. And so if people make mistakes or do the wrong thing, it's going to happen. And I say as a security professional, you need to take that into account. Either make your security procedures a little more transparent so they don't do dumb things like write their password on Notepad or use something that auto-fills it in or whatever. But it's definitely a push-pull. So I do consider that as a separate category from phishing. We just published a big phishing report like days ago, which we get into a little more detail on what's going on with phishing, and that was in conjunction with the web group.
Right. Two things. One, I can tell you from a financial perspective, the PCI Council is cracking down hard on, if you go to your next slide, on the first chunk there, card stealing web injections.
Good.
They're changing how their compliance allows or governs over types of systems that collect the card data specifically. And so that's getting harder to do. And so the product space for that is changing for people who want to host pieces of your code to accept card data, things like that. Two, you're exactly right. I mean, my customer base has been getting actively phished all week.
It's phishing season.
Yeah, it's phishing season, and they're using it for financial compromise. So, that is changing our focus in how we look at our application security. So that, because apparently some of the criteria that can be used for authorization or to authenticate an account can be found within the app once you're logged in.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we're changing phone, decision trees and things like that and pulling specific data off of the site so that a compromised credential doesn't glean them any additional information that can be used for further authentication for another account.
Nice.
So I mean, these things are a feedback loop.
You have an F5 lab sticker. Those are rare. Cool.
Yeah, like that.
Everyone did. Yeah, that's good to hear. Actually, I'm going to follow up on the PCI thing. It's been a while since I've had to dive into PCI, which, like I said, my last job was lots of that. But I'll take a look at that. This is just my explainer slide, which probably everybody knows how this works. What no one is telling me is the specific attacks that are happening. We're at least not seeing that in the breach letters. You're seeing a lot of it just in the analysis from companies. But it is kind of fun stuff. Somebody was even calling it like web point of sale card sniffing. Yeah. Yeah, here's one of those where I kind of said, and this is still going on. As I keep giving this talk month after month, it's like, I can just go and get the headlines. And now it's finally really bubbling up into the mainstream of the security world news. But, it was out there for a long time. Because basically I was looking at this now going, what's with all this injection? And then I started looking back and going, oh, well, it's this mage card thing. That's what it is. It's an active campaign. And it's obviously working for them, so they're just going to keep doing it. I point to the OWASP and say, hey, injection is still number one. And actually, most of the talks I give is like, hey, when I say injection, I don't just mean SQL injection. Because we've heard SQL injection over and over again, but think about command injection, think about code injection. Those things happen too. I also mentioned credential theft and access attacks. This is the one where I actually kind of broke that out in detail too. What I've seen in the new numbers too is more and more compromised email, especially in the medical industry. I'm giving a talk in a few weeks to a bunch of hospitals and health professionals, and they'll be like, stop putting patient data in your email. Get it out of your email. Somebody gets phished and they either pull it out of your email or they get phished and then they use those credentials to phish sideways and then they hit somebody who's got all this stuff in their email, so stop. I also did a big ranty blog on access misconfiguration because that is a ridiculously high number for us operations folks to keep still accidentally. I mean, and if you read the breach letters, you see things like, oh, somebody left the database wide open or left default credentials. I mean, that's the IoT thing. It's default credentials. Or, I left my S3 bucket wide open with all this data in it. It's just like, oh, come on, guys. Yeah. And then this is somebody who's been through 8 years of formal change control under SOX and SSA 16 audits. So it's like, change control and access control, it's a discipline you just really need to get into. So I am a very formal risk guy. One of the things I'm another big member in is SIRA, Society for Information Risk Analysis. I really love data-driven risk, and it's something that's excited about it. Everybody here actually does real risk analysis, and that means like real numbers. That's part of what I wanted this report to provide, was the numbers to work in. And a lot of us, especially in security, are now hearing this from our bosses about when we come to them like, hey, I need this new WAF, I need this new, code checking tool or whatever. And they're like, well, can you prove it? Can you show me some data? And what I wanted to be able to do is provide that ammunition. So, this is your basic risk formula. For those who are not familiar with the formula. The idea being, most people kind of are like, well, we can do estimates on this. And there actually is a formal way to do the estimates. It actually provides some detail if anybody's familiar with the work of Doug Hubbard, where you can do calibrated analysis. But what I wanted to do was actually give you hard numbers. And really, it's likelihood times impact. And it's actually not multiplied by, but it's really, there's a relationship between the two. And what you have, really some variables to plug in there. And on the impact side, and you saw some of that was calculated via survey, and kind of when it asks people what that is, and that's going to vary for every organization. Those impacts are going to be different. Some people are going to care more, some are going to care less about different kinds of things. So, that's basically like, hey, what it's going to cost if our website gets popped, what it's going to cost if our website goes down and nobody can work. You can put a dollar number on that, or what you can. What is harder to do is on the likelihood side. And really, there's three big missing numbers. What are the attackers doing today? What vulnerabilities do we have open in order to kick us? And then how easy are they to exploit those vulnerabilities? So that's really what the heart of this report was, is to give you numbers to fill that in. And so this is kind of part of the talk I've not given before, is showing behind the curtain. So the first piece of it is the Lorca attack data. And before I actually get in, I'll show you what it looks like. So like I said, tens of thousands of sensors all over the world. And they basically handed me 887 megs of JSON data to parse through. They kind of look like that. Tons and tons and tons and tons of this. These are essentially entries where you see some bad guy poking on something, where they're coming from, what time, and everything you get. And I remember I just said for web data, they have data on lots of different things, but their honeypots were specifically, they were giving me data for the web. And you can see a bunch of PHP in there, and that's on purpose because I have a lot of PHP data. A little more formatted so you can kind of see what's going on, all the sensors. And really what I was looking for was this. The gets and the heads, what are they looking for? What are they actually poking on? And really this is like one of the most common things I was seeing is some sort of PHP grab, which was another big central theme of this report, is to say, and it's hard to even to make a judgment about like why there's so much PHP stuff going on out there. It's like it's a very popular thing to use, but at the same time, it's also very easy to use, which makes it popular, so that there's a lot of people out there coding it that really don't know what they're doing, especially around security. So you end up seeing a lot of vulnerabilities, and so of course the bad guys are going to be attacking a lot. So basically went through all this data and started tallying up all these things and dropping them into buckets. Starting to see stuff like this. And you can see really these are all just variations on PHP badness. Or you can see like there's various attack campaigns. And this is annual, so this is a summary of the entire year. But yeah, it's PHP of every kind of flavor. And then this is actually what's in the report, is a summary of that. Those of you who have taken more than second grade or third grade math will realize that this adds up to over 100%. That is because SQL and PHP overlap. Basically, people were doing SQL injection on PHP. So this was my big takeaway, especially when I'm talking to people who aren't web application security professionals. If you're running PHP, you really need to look at your site for vulnerabilities, because they're hammering on it right now. You may be 100% secure, you may have patched every bug, but there's still people pounding on it right now. looking for more holes. So take a look at it, or as Jeremiah likes to say, hack yourself first. The other piece that we looked at was the vulnerability data. This is some of the white hat stuff. So this is summary for SAST and DAST over the year. Sorry, they didn't build right. They went too fast. Tons and tons of stuff here, and started to summarize that. I also got a bunch of exploit data from exploit.db, and you see how this all breaks out. And we started to, this is actually the Whatcom people who are doing this analysis for me, trying to drop these into different categories. And we're trying to even break this out further, because F5 has a big interest in IoT security as well. So we're starting to look at that as a separate category. What I really did was I saw so much PHP that I created a whole, this is what the PHP vulnerabilities look like. And these are everything without the PHP vulnerabilities. And you can actually see how SQL injection jumps to the top for PHP versus not. What you can actually think about is there is a relationship there, and I'll get to that in a minute. So as I was saying earlier, now you have numbers that you can shove into the formula and start doing some analysis. And this is actually ripped right from the report. Wherever I could, I actually provide you with numbers. And the idea being that you could actually make a calculation. And so it's like, hey, if I'm running this kind of data or this kind of technology in this environment, this is an idea of what my risk looks like. As I said, there was some interesting relationship here, and this is not something that I discovered, but it was really kind of nice to prove it again. When I ran, so on the left side, or actually say your right side, the exploit data. So those are published exploits for various web applications. And on the other side is those are actual attacks in the wild. So as seen on the honeypots. And you can see the numbers. Look, when I first saw this, I was like, oh wait, so I mixed up the graphs. Did I actually paste the data together? And I looked at it again, I'm like, no, it's actually, they're very close numbers. They're not the same, but they're very close. This is a known relationship. And actually it's been written about, and this is probably the seminal good paper, I would think, on it. It basically says if somebody publishes an exploit on something, that's more telling about you're going to see that attack against you than anything else. There's even if you see a lower CVSS score, it's a medium or whatever. But if there's a published canned exploit, there's more of a chance you're going to see it. And so a lot of places who have the strategy of we're only going to patch, CVSS v3 score 7, or we're only going to patch all the highs. That's not as helpful to you as just patching things with published exploits. So it's a lot, and I think I've actually heard just in the past week or two, it's like 7 times more likely if there's a published exploit that you'll see an attack on it. And really, what I'm saying is this data shows you right there. What I can't explain is you see a lot more exchange attacks than there are exploits for exchange. But there's a lot of Microsoft Exchange out there as well.
Is the other covering like Node.js and all the other JavaScript frameworks that are now getting more and more popular?
I don't know. I mean, what I haven't done and I want to do in this year is really to map popularity to exploits. I kind of did this at the time I did this and really was like, okay, it works for PHP, but it doesn't really work for Exchange and .NET and things like that. But I'm like days away from getting my big chunk of data from Morga for 2018. What they basically do is give me the first 11 months, and then I work on the analysis, and then I get the last month and finish it up, because it takes me so long to process this.
What is interesting is CVSS has a temporal score for exploit code maturity.
Yes, and I've had, yes.
But you know what? I just running the calculator, I was like, I want to double check. It doesn't bump it up like you think it would.
Yes.
In fact, it sometimes lowers it.
Yes.
It's bizarre.
I would, Mike Reutman, who wrote this paper with Dan Gear, one of my heroes, and it's really hard to read on there, but it's on the Usenix site. I highly recommend reading it because he talks about that.
Yeah.
And so Mike Reutman works for Kenna Security, which is I think the third name of that company. They were a spin-off, or the team who started that were actually 2 guys from White Hat.
Actually, Ed Bellis came here like 5 years ago.
Oh, okay, yeah.
When he was still with, he called it Honey something or another.
Yeah, that was the first name.
Then Risk.io.
Yes.
Yeah, he came and.
I've been following them a long time, and they finally are getting their models down, because I think during the Risk.io time, me and Mike Reutman kind of had it out, because I was like, your data models aren't making sense on my inside network, because he was telling me just bizarre things like, pass the hashtags were more likely on my inside network. And I'm just like, really? That's the most important thing I have to fix?
Yeah.
But that's what his entire job is, essentially, is to take all these data measures in the universe and then be able to, feed in your vulnerabilities, and it'll come out and say, patch that one first. And they charge you. At the time, it was like $1.
Yeah.
$1 a node. And they've gotten a lot better. They're doing a lot of machine learning. I think he's got 14 different variables that are all balancing in this model to figure this out. And we're actually toying with a bunch of that in F5 Labs as well, where we're decomposing the actual metadata that comes with the vulnerability, like the actual text right up, to see what we can find there too. And we're actually hoping to publish, I wouldn't say it's as good as Kenna, but it'll be a very similar light version on our website. And it'll focus mostly on web apps, about exploitability versus what we're seeing in the wild. This is one you guys probably know about as well, but I've kind of been stumping on this one a bunch too, about deserialization, especially since Apache Struts was a form of this, and it's also command injection. So this is my explainer for those of you who probably don't get it. You have all these mobile apps, you have all these very fat single-page clients that are doing data passing back and forth, and it's all over HTTPS, hopefully it's somewhat encrypted with something, but of course the data itself, the bad guys can take apart and mess with, and here's the example of they just upscale to privilege escalate themselves and make themselves an admin. It's very trivial, and this has really caught on since we've had those big dumps of data from our government on how these vulnerabilities work. And what we've seen, if you look at the exploit data, is it's been flat and rare until last year. I haven't put up the 2018 numbers, but it was already, as of the summer, it was halfway there to 13. So more and more deserialization is out there. And so this has been another mantra that I've been telling people is if you're doing this, you might want to really look at that security. I just recently did a story on cryptocurrency theft, so I thought I'd also throw some data on there because these are primarily web app attacks. You see there's a big bump up if anybody's doing any kind of cryptocurrency stuff. This story is actually on the website with a lot more detail than this. So if you go to f5labs.com, you can read it. But you can see that this has suddenly become a really hot thing. And it really became hot once the price of Bitcoin jumped up. Which is right there, the year of Bitcoin. So you see that's where the graphs start jumping. So if you want to make money quick as a hacker, hack an exchange. It's not just cryptocurrency mining. And of course, I wanted to go through and read all the details on those stories and see what was going on as well. And see app vulnerability is number one. Well, unknown obviously is one, but I attached the dollar values here in millions. So again, if you want to make an average of $300 million, and go for the app vulnerabilities. And it's all the same stupid stuff that everybody else has been doing. One interesting stat that I found was the insider numbers was way higher in the cryptocurrency world. Who would think all that just essentially cash laying around in kind of different countries and the shady business would be more prone to people just walking out the door with it, or of course claiming they get hacked and close the currency. Yeah. We also look at denial of service against applications, and we see a lot of ugliness here. Just kind of some stats from our internal folks about what we're seeing. You can see application attack is a small percentage, but it's been growing. Although for Q3 of 2016, it seems abnormally high. But we're also seeing these, usually they come in conjunction with each other. But where we see it growing is actually by region. North America stayed somewhat steady, whereas you're seeing growth now in other countries as they're becoming more dependent on apps and putting out more apps and things break, it just hurts them more. This is one from one of our guys about a reflection attack, particularly ugly form of a layer 7 DDoS, where you have a content distribution node sitting out there, and its whole job is to essentially offload content from the web server, but then bad guys actually look at that, especially if it's open to the internet, and they figure out how to actually pass it a web request with the correct hash and all that to the CDN for a web page that does not exist. And so by flooding with those little tiny requests, the CDN actually goes into a reverse role. Instead of offloading the web server, it now loads the web server. And it's a nice little DDoS attack where you can have somebody's infrastructure just tear itself apart. And it's a nice, it's not only reflection, but it's amplification.
So generally, architecturally, CDN should never talk to web app servers. Because the reason why we have CDNs is because we need to offload whatever we have load on web app servers, right? We need to put it on CDN. Or even some things which serve, like for example, a video file.
Mm-hmm.
So we put all those things in CDN. So why would a CDN server go and talk to a web app server?
So these are things that aren't cached yet. So when it's not cached, it has to go back to the word. So you cache it the first time.
So
Well, and I also
would go to the web app server, and the web app server would redirect to the CDN server. With a specific URL.
The attacker is requesting a bunch of videos that don't exist.
right.
So
Statefully.
So the CDN says, you're asking me for something that doesn't exist.
But it looks like a legal request
Right.
because they've hashed it correctly. So it goes, oh, that's over there, I'll go get that. And then the web server's like, I don't have that.
Yeah.
And also when you talk about design, I mean, there's a huge chunk of what should happen that, when I look at the Mage Cart ones, you see well, aren't you looking at the code on your own website and notifying people when it changes? I mean, because a lot of these breach letters are like, well, this happened, 8 months ago and it happened for this period. I'm like, you're not looking at your website. You're just not knowing that the code actually changed on your running website. And it was changed for 3 months and you had no idea. I mean, there's just so much this is why I'm glad I'm a researcher now and not working in, sorry. I put in my time. So yes, we need people out there doing things.
Right, when you talk about dollars spent, does that include any insurance cost? Is that what?
It does not. So I was looking purely at so what you saw here were, this is people's estimates. So tell me what you think it was. We did a story on Labs page where we actually looked at actual fines, because that's public information. The FTC fined this company this much, or there's this lawsuit and this was the judgment. We added all that up and that came up to some big numbers. And then in some cases, they actually disclosed the legal fees. And I was like, $2 million of legal fees, and they won the case. I was like, ugh. Yeah, so which I said, if there's anything more expensive than a security guy, I'd say lawyer.
Except it's a protected.
So my last section, I actually have this whole spiel about what people should be doing to protect their apps. You guys know that stuff. So what I thought would be more interesting is actually to talk about what some of the survey data was telling people, what they were saying to me about how they're protecting their apps. And this is always my first question. And it's, if you read my book, remember you can get I'll give you a review copy, send me an email. I was asked, so do you know what you have? When we go back to do you even know what's running on your website? And this is kind of a thing that both is disheartening and at least makes me hopeful, because when people say 38% have no confidence in knowing where all their apps are, that's a sad high number. But at the same time, at least they know they don't know, because a lot of people say, oh yeah, I know exactly what everybody's running. And it's like, you probably don't. And so, how can you defend what you don't even know is out there, and where your data is going, what the state of patch is. So, and it's funny because Jeremiah's a new company, not to be chilling him, but he actually has a new company that's just all about this. So I'm really excited about that. He actually gave me a preview at Black Hat. It's pretty awesome. It actually tracks all your certificates too, which is always the one like, hey, the certificate of domain just went away because we forgot about that one. So I'm a big harper on inventory and knowing what you have. And I'm sure this is one you guys live every day. And this one varies a bit by country and industry as well, about who owns this. It's very clear about who owns desktop security, or even who owns that server over there, who's responsible for securing it. But when you get into this app risk thing, especially since these things are driving business units, it becomes this finger point. And I've given this talk to very large security or technical companies. One of them just got bought by IBM. And it's kind of funny to see, I throw this out there and start talking about the finger pointing, and then the room starts turning into finger pointing. Because you get this kind of like, well, the developers, they own security. Well, it's like, well, no, the business unit, because they actually determine impact, because they'll be like, you can't put that patch on, we've got this big thing rolling out, you can't just like shut us down or slow us down. And then it's, when all the fighting's done, it rolls up to the CISO. Or, if there's no CISO, which a lot of places it doesn't, it rolls all the way back up to the CIO or CTO. And so really the first answer and the last answer are really the same thing. And so, if nobody is really owning this, how can you really secure this? Who can make the decisions about when to patch, when to scan, what to do with the scanning? And what are the actual requirements? One of the things that I did in my last job in the financial world is I worked with the dev team to take security requirements and make them customer requirements. Because my customers were banks, so it was easy to say, like, our bank has this written into our contract. So now you're going to add that to your stories. And that's going to be an important use case so that you need to follow these things. And, it worked. But it is a difficult thing to figure out. We have some people who are defending themselves, and really WAF jumped up as number one. Yay, because we sell WAFs. Scanning comes in there. And these kind of bounce around between pen test. And I'm not even sure if most people are really fully clear on the difference, even security professionals, between pen testing and app scanning. I know you guys are, but you get, because you see things like anti-malware software, and you're like, what is that there? Although I did hear a cogent answer from actually that company I just mentioned earlier about how they're using actually anti-malware software on their servers on the edge to protect against apps, which could tell you things like somebody just messed with our code. It was configured right. And also the anti-DDoS, that kind of bounced around based on what industry, and some industries really care about DDoS, like the financial industry, and others don't care. And the financial industry, I can tell you, those of you who don't work there, it's like every minute of downtime is money they're not making because they're doing an online loan. It's like the bread and butter, what's going on. Or they're processing credit card transactions, so that's money. So any DDoS is going to be a problem. Now here's in tech, you can see the numbers changed a little. More focus on app scanning, less on pen testing. And of course, when you're talking about scanning, how often are you doing it? And again, all over the map. You can see the people who are checking the box on PCI or whatever their compliance regime versus the people who really get it. And it's like every time the code changes. And I'd say even faster than that, because you not just have code changes going on, but you have new vulnerabilities discovered. And I think we've yet to publish a statistic, but we're seeing critical vulnerabilities released like every 9 hours. So it's, they're just coming in an insane speed. So.
Is that new vulnerabilities or?
Yes. Yeah.
So remote code execution?
We're just calling, they're basically rated as critical. So basically we got an intern over the summer who was a real crackerjack, and we put him together with one of our senior guys, and he wrote a bunch of really cool scraping code that pulled all that vulnerability data and did some analysis, and we started looking at it, and we're like, wait, but the frequency, no one's talking about the frequency. And it's like, that is a scary number. It's like, that's literally faster than anybody could patch. And, we're going to reach the point where it's just a continuous stream of, you just have to be patching all the time, which is absurd. Yeah. But, like I said, I've known Jeremiah, and I've been using White Hat since the beginning with various companies. There, as a consultant, I used to recommend it, but I like their idea of continuous testing. And there are obviously other companies do that, but that's the one I'm familiar with. It's just the idea that we're always testing, we're just always scanning. It's always the live thing. I just always want to know if you find something new. We also asked people about this since we saw the access and credit theft and phishing going on, and huge number still. It's like unique name and password for the app, which of course is probably the same for everybody, for all their accounts, for everything. But we are seeing the numbers starting to climb for two-factor and federation. So that's pretty good. There's at least seen some.
What is none of the above?
That's an interesting question. So I didn't do the survey. I actually did it with Polygon, and this came back, and so we were feeling like, well, because people you had to check the box as to which one, and so it's like, well, we weren't doing any of these things. So they may have been doing something else. Maybe they're doing some IP authentication, or, you know, they're doing that risk-based, you know, let's ask, and 1.5. So, yeah. So yeah, that's,
We don't have a username and password, we just have the key.
yeah. Crypto usage, mostly because F5's legacy is doing lots and lots of crypto, but also, I talk about this in the report, it's the fact that apps don't exist now as a monolithic thing. They're just a whole bunch of lots of little things all glued together. What does that glue look like? And are all those pieces encrypted? And so, you know, and this is actually one that varied a whole lot by country. You can see a lot less encryption in China, or a lot more use of self-signed certs, which is no surprise given the legal status of things there. But, you know, it's, people are using crypto. We also, one of the last questions we asked was, well, what do you consider the biggest barrier to app defense? And this has come up over and over again in other places and surveys and things we've done for F5, not just in the pure security side, but even in some of our state of applications, about lack of visibility in the app layer. And that is one of the things why we worked on this improved model of an app, where you kind of see, you bring, and I didn't go into that here, but they know that whole concept of, like, you know, you've got the code and all that, but you also have DNS, you have the infrastructure, you've got the network, you've got the encryption, all those different pieces all are touch points where you can gain visibility into an app. And there are also places where you can see bad guys go in. The next two I really see is the same thing, migration to the cloud and lack of skill, because anybody who's actually done any cloud work can go, well, you actually get better security because you can focus on the app. But if you don't have people who are skilled in deploying to the cloud, then it's probably going to be worse. So really,
Only if you think that making an S3 bucket public is a good idea.
exactly, that would be the lack of skills part.
The defense market has adapted to this type of problem. I mean, that's why we have things like RASP, right? Because people just want to,
Yes.
you know, put a bubble around their app and.
So yeah, like I say, the funny thing is, so I worked on, actually a friend of mine, he was chief operating officer at a health tech. They were doing a bunch of online kind of HIPAA things. And they were doing it all cloud-based because they were a new startup. And it was like, well, we need to care about security. And he's like, really, you know, how do we do that? And it's like, well, we're going to put it all in the cloud. That takes care of it. It's like, that's, you know, the cloud, it's only up to this point. And it's like, oh, no, but we're going to go to this provider who they are HIPAA compliant. So now we're all good. And I'm like, but you have a bunch of developers who are writing code and downloading the code to their laptops, which were all, you know, just literally standalone Macs in a room. And, you know, with the AWS keys on them and no security policies or anything. And it's just like, we're not HIPAA compliant. It's like, but we went to this, you know, thing and they say they are and they give us a certificate. And so it's like, yeah, lack of skilled personnel. He eventually just gave up, I guess it was a losing battle.
So your one slide had for app defense, they were all technology controls. The one like 2 or 3 back or whatever it was. Where it was talking about web app firewalls, those kinds of things. But then, yeah, so here, those are all technology controls. But then on that last slide where you're just at, it intermingles with technology and people controls. Doesn't that seem?
That's a good point.
Because when I saw that first slide, I thought, well, what about the people? Was it a question just for technology, you know, the defenses? Or do we consider that a defense? That's what I thought. But then when I saw this slide, so just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely separate them out. And I am very much a process and training kind of guy. I mean, that's having grown up in the world of we have no money to buy anything. So what can we figure out with mod security and the developers working on their own? And yeah, I think it was how the questions were phrased. I don't have the actual question, although they may be in the document there, because we actually do have the text of the thing. And some of the choices, I mean, that's how Pwnymon put the questions together. I'm actually redoing how I'm going to do the survey for the next time. I'm actually working with Wade Baker this time. It's really cool to have Sanj on board finally, because I really want to get into that kind of stuff. But that's a good point. I'm taking it up. I like the not a priority, 13%.
Police are honest.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like there. I mean, there's for that slide. There's like there are lots of tools for app layer. So, you know,
Yeah.
So when you say, so then really lack of budget should probably be right at the top.
Yeah,
Because, right, you know what I mean?
that's true. Well, and that was something that I worked hard on, you know, when I was doing this, was like, how can I get that? How can I find out what's going on? And it was a whole mismatch of things as well. Anyway, so that's kind of the highlights of the report. You can actually go download it there. More pictures. Just had a lot of fun with the graphics. No, I didn't draw them, but it was fun working with the artist on it. Lots and lots of stuff. We actually have published a bunch of articles in addition to this, because when I wrote this thing, when it hit 100 pages, it was like, I got to start pulling stuff out. And so I started creating new articles around it that were kind of exploring some of these things in more detail. And then continue to do it. I think I've got one on APIs coming out soon, just because I wanted to have a whole discussion about APIs, and I just couldn't fit it. So they're now separate things. And of course, like I said, this is all on our website. We put out two articles a week. It's ungated, which means you don't have to fill out that little form to download it and fill it full of fake information, which is what I always did when I was CISO, because I never wanted to. I literally had stuff when I put in my real information and hit download, and like by the time it reached my desktop, my phone would be ringing. I'm like, what do you think of our white paper? I'm like, I haven't even read it yet. So we don't gate anything. I mean, like I said, we're just all about pushing research out. So, and this is just one of many different reports we have available. And again, they're all very, you know, non-product-y. There's no product mentioned in them, but it's, you know, on lots of different topics. The one on encryption, you can see with the guy who